knowledge diplomacy as she does. And so she says that knowledge diplomacy is a new approach to understanding the role of international higher education, research, and innovation in strengthening relations among countries and addressing common global challenges. And she also says that global issues are now national issues, and many national issues are also global issues. I think COVID made that very clear to us. And so she says that in addressing these issues, we need resources, we need expertise, and political will from diverse actors, sectors, and countries. It may seem like a mouthful, but this is all we have been discussing since yesterday. And so the key characteristics of knowledge diplomacy are a focus on higher education, diversity of actors and partners, recognition of different needs and collective use of resources, mutual reciprocity, but with different benefits, and it also seeks to build and strengthen relations between and among countries. I am not here to give a lecture on what knowledge diplomacy is. So that is the way Jane Knight has characterized knowledge diplomacy. But one thing Dr. Gone has made very clear to us is the need for going back to our roots, indigenous knowledge systems. And so I would like to borrow an excerpt from Ochola Ayayo's book that he wrote in 1976. And the title is Traditional Ideology and Ethics Among the Southern Luo. And in that book, he says that the Luo culture, like any other culture, has a body of concepts and generalizations. And in defining a concept, the Luo teacher starts with the description of the concepts, and a youth is asked to say the concept which has the characteristics described. For example, and I will say this in my mother tongue, and these are riddles that we learned as children. So Prof, perhaps you can answer. Don't look at the answer that is provided on the screen. Angiot maonge dot enango.
The answer is already there.
The answer is already there. So what that means is, I'll translate it. My house has no door. What is it? And the student will answer, it's an egg. So those are some of the ways that we were taught traditionally, through riddles, through proverbs, and through folk tales. And so based on that, what we are saying is that even traditionally we had concepts, but perhaps we had different ways of defining these concepts. What we did was to look at what are the characteristics of this concept, and then ensure that the learner gets to know those characteristics, and it will help them to identify the concepts. And so in order for us to have a better understanding of what knowledge diplomacy is, I'm going to ask Professor George Makonyango and Dr. Lilian Omondi to give us their presentation on the projects they've been running in Maseno University. I'm part of their projects, and they've done many projects. I'm part of their CPC and EGEM projects. And so as they discuss the activities they've been engaged in, you'll see these characteristics of knowledge diplomacy, so that wherever you are, you'll be able to identify what knowledge diplomacy entails. So Prof, over to you.
Thank you. I hope my PowerPoint is visible to everybody. I need affirmation before I continue.
Not yet.
Yeah. The PowerPoint, no.
Not yet. So I share my screen. Now I think it is. Yep. So this is basically a journey in partnership in which we have worked with different organizations across the globe in what Mary has just defined as knowledge diplomacy. Sounds very nice when you call it knowledge diplomacy, but most of the time what we're doing is writing proposals and getting funding. And then we have partners with whom we work. But basically, that's what we have gone through. This is a journey that has been running for the last 7 years. So the first project we started with was called Building Stronger Capacities to Link Spatial Planning to Agribusiness and Public Policy Development in Greater Western Kenya. This was a mouthful, but it had several things that we were doing. Basically, we were building capacities of Maseno University to be able to deliver on issues of spatial planning, agribusiness, and public policy. And so we had a partnership of universities from the north, which was the Vrije University of Amsterdam, and then they were working with Moi University, Kenya, and Dutch Alliance for Sustainable Urban Development in Africa, and Netherlands Enterprise Agency. So if you look at all this, you have institutions in Kenya and in Netherlands working together to develop a strategy or an intervention that would create capacity within the university to deliver on some of these issues. And this was done with funding from Nuffic, Netherlands. At the beginning, we were saying that we didn't have the capacity to do a lot of research. And so this capacity building project was supposed to enable us to move to the next step. And so those are basically the aspects that we're dealing with in terms of supporting us in education and research. But we also developed a multi-stakeholder platform in which we had different players within the region in the different sectors in agribusiness policy. And they helped in driving this intervention to different directions. We had the building of the staff capacity within the university. We had the curriculum review. We had research and innovation. But what was most important is that we had students as part of this particular process. So the students were able to interact with our different stakeholders, and 6 of them were able to use this platform to leverage themselves to undertake their PhD work. 2 of them in Netherlands and 4 of them in Kenya, but all supported by the project. So slowly you begin to see how we are building mutual kind of relationships between the universities in Netherlands and Kenya, and building our capacity to be able to undertake research and innovation, especially building the capacity of the PhD students who eventually would come back to become staff members in the university. And we also addressed issues of gender running right across the project. And that was deliberate because you're saying that the tendency is for a kind of a disadvantage to the female research staff in the university. And we needed to bring them on board so that we could be able to get a gender-sensitive learning and teaching staff program. And that was a very key component of this particular project intervention, because it allows for us to recognize the different roles and responsibilities of the different players, and allowed us to be able to see how we could play as builders and strengthening of relationships between the different actors, not only within Kenya, but also between Kenya and Netherlands. And that was the start of our great journey. Then we also looked at the labor market. In the labor market, we were able to engage in different activities that showcased the research that we are doing to the community. And most important, we had these multi-stakeholders who are very critical in terms of disseminating the knowledge that we are undertaking through this research, because most of the time we have research, we publish papers in reputable journals, and that's about it. But here we are deliberately developing a strategy in which we were going to co-create knowledge with the stakeholders. And the different stakeholders were in the both private and public sector, working together with the university to create knowledge and disseminate that knowledge. So you have in that picture there basically is an organization that was using its knowledge that it got to produce oil. And the oil is from sesame and sunflower and so on. And the students were able to learn how to engage in that kind of agribusiness and so on. And so these players in the private sector and the public sector would then come and also talk to our students. And that took us to the next level, and that was this particular project of creating postgraduate collaborations. Now, creating the postgraduate collaboration proposal was written by the team that was in the SPADE, plus another team that had been undertaking another project, also in partnership with universities from the north. So slowly we are expanding our networks of the different players in higher education, research, and innovation. So we had the same team from Amsterdam University, Free University of Amsterdam. We had now additional players from Erasmus University, University of Antwerp, and Bogazici University in Turkey from the north. Then in Kenya, we had Moi University, Maseno University, and Southeastern Kenya University. And then we also went to South Africa. We had University of Venda and Rose University. So this big network of players in the north and south enabled us to build on our experiences from earlier projects that had been undertaken by the players, like what we had in the SPADE project. Asali was a project that was being done with Moi University and Southeastern Kenya University. Then EPE, which is enhancing postgraduate education, was being undertaken in South Africa in partnership with VU Amsterdam. And so all this knowledge was brought into play to create this, creating postgraduate collaborations. So creating postgraduate collaborations basically a project that targets postgraduate capacity building and enabling us to realize that we have different needs and capacities, whether it's north or south. And so some of the projects that were undertaken were having what we call scholarly conversations and summer schools, so that the summer schools, for example, in Antwerp was attended by people from the south. And then south, we are also developing summer schools that students from the north will be able to attend. Then we have ongoing research and evaluation that builds on the capacity of postgraduate players. And the most interesting thing was the training on postgraduate supervision course that was mounted in Rhodes University in South Africa, and had all this expertise from both North and South in supporting the training. This is just an example of our director postgraduate studies giving a certificate to Professor Kilonzo. She also went through this training in postgraduate supervision. And so that was a very deliberate attempt to build the capacities of postgraduate supervisors to be more responsive in how they supervise. And we were building on the skills and the capacities from the different players that we had. And that helps us be able to diversify the different actors that we have in terms of postgraduate supervision. And there was also capacity building in terms of infrastructure, so that the different universities in the south would be able to set up facilities that would enhance their capability for knowledge co-production. And so those resources would then be used across the universities. So we have Maseno University setting up the graduate school, seminar room, Moi University providing a space for scholarly engagement, Southeastern University setting up spaces for postgraduate activities, University of Venda establishing a mobile ICT office, and Rhodes, which had just established a center for postgraduate studies, was also strengthening it through this particular project. So you see different needs in different universities, but you have one project that covers everybody. So you don't have to have one particular design that fits all, but being able to appreciate our different needs and capacities and working within this particular project. And that has actually helped us to create a network that would be used to develop further projects. Engendering mentorship is something that was developed from the SPADE project earlier on, which had a gender component. and also addressing some of the issues that were raised during the CPC project implementation. And so we developed a specific